This is Gemara Baba Basra Daf Yud Gimel, and we're holding at the very top of Yud Gimel Amid Aleph. An exciting day. You know, whenever you get a Gemara and you flip through it and you see a daf with all these pictures, it's always exciting. P'siyata d'shmaya. Let's hope we can get clarity through the pictures. We begin today really with a quick segue from yesterday, which is we're in the middle of discussing how we divide up certain fields with rivers, etc. So in the top of Yud Gimel Amid Aleph, says the Gemara, Chad Gisa Nagra v'Chad Gisa Nahara Palginan Bekarna Zul. If we have a case of one side of the field is a canal and one side of the field is a river, Chad Gisa Nagra v'Chad Gisa Nahara, and this is indeed the picture that you have in Rashi, as you see Chad Gisa Nahara v'Chad Gisa Nagra. What do? You divide it Bekerna Zul. You divide it from corner to corner. The reason being we want to have equal allotment of each person being near the Nahar, being near as well the Nagra, the canal, and the river. For a moment, will look more into Rashi. Rashi said, Chagis and Nagra, v'Chagis and Nahara, Sada shal Shnei Achad. Sheish Nahar al Panei Mizrach, v'Nagra al Panei Sfaina. As we see in the beautiful picture in Rashi, of course, we can make mention that Taisis quotes Rabbeinu Chanan al Sada, Asher Mizrachu Sfaina Naharo Ma'arva Duraima Moshech Nigra. Rabbeinu Chanan has a different take on the case. Let's stick with Rashi for the moment. Yopalgula Bekarna Zol, why? Lefishanar Toiv Min Anar. The Nahar, the river, is better than the canal. Vasamach Lamayim Toiv Min Harachok. V'im Techalkenu Min Asafoi Nimsa Kol Nahar Lechot. If you divide it north one way, then one is only going to get the whole river. Vasheni Ein Le'el Nagar only get the canal. B'Svainai. Ubamim Shu Yavish, the canal time dries up. Whereas if you split it east to west, you have Lechan and Nara B'nei Mizrach, and Nagar B'nei Svainai. L'Sheni has nothing. Ein Le'el Nahar B'Mizrachai. L'Figa Yachledu L'Shemaina Chalakim, split into 8 pieces. You make a nice pizza pie, and everyone has equal access to the Nahar, which they all want, to the river, and equal access as well to the canal, which is some Mailah, but not as beneficial as the river. Continues the Gemara of Eloi Es HaTraklin, that we do not divide a mansion unless it's enough. Again, we're figuring out that the only way we do these these divisions, is if each party is going to end up with enough, that's going to be an appropriate. It's going to be an appropriate division for each. Says the Gemara, Ein bem kedila zeh. If each one is not big enough that they get an appropriate amount, Mahu, what's the halacha? Says the Gemara, we have a machlekes Rav Yehuda, Mar teaches Rav Yehuda, is dinar de good or good. Is a din of good or agud of Nachman Amar less dinar. Good. So says the Gemara, what do we do if they don't get appropriate amount for each? It's not a big enough area. Then he says, Rabbi Yehuda, there's a halacha that one can say, either you go with my price or I'll give a price. And Rav Nachman says, no, there's no such thing. Let's look at Rashi again. Rashi says, is dina the good or agud? One of them wants to divide up the property. Like says the one who doesn't want to. Either let's set a price and you'll buy my portion, or I'll set a price and I'll pay you for your portion. Because there's no way to create a partnership in this area. Says the Gemara. Why? Because again, each one can't get its own area. So to be together, they're able to demand that. Rav Nachman says, no, less dina the good or agid, and rather each one could just say, I want to stay joint owners of this area. Amrle Rav Nachman, according to you, Rav Nachman said you cannot dissolve the partnership; they have to own it together. L'didacht Amr Lestina to good ayagud. Becharu Pasha Chenil Lenavi and Evdu Behema. We have a firstborn and a regular kid. The father left him an eved, a slave, or a behema to man, not kosher animal. Kesad oisin. What do we do? There's no way to share this equally, and therefore, what are we going to do? We're going to make them trade off turns? That makes no sense. But you hold there's no din of good or agid. There's no good to demand the other one to sell his portion. Amar Le, Rav Nachman responds 10 lines down. Shani Omer Oived Lezei Yomer Chalazeh Shnei Yamim. Says Rav Nachman, no, that's indeed what I hold. The regular guy gets it for 1 day, and the Bechar gets it for 2 days. It's true. It's not so convenient. But Lamaisa, this is the way, and you cannot force the other one to dissolve the partnership. Meisvei asked the Gemara now, and Rav Yehuda Misha Chatzia Bava v'Chatzia Ben Chayrein Oivides Rabbi Yomechad v'Satzva Yomechad Divri Beis Hillel Beishamei Oimrim Tikantem Es Rabbi v'Satzma Lo Tikantem. Says Beishamei, very good, you solved the master's issue that he gets the Eved for 1 day. But what about the Eved himself? Lisa Shivcha Inu Yachli Kamari of Shivcha Lisa Ben Chayrein Inu Yachol Yevatel. What? This Eved should just be bottled and not get married? V'Lo Nivra Ilam. The world was created for Peruvush and Amar. So says Beishamai, what do you do over here? Ella, he says Beishamai, no, you do. Kaifinis, Rabbi, we forced the master of Oisin Asai, Ben Chayrin, and we makes himself, and he has to free him, the Kaisin Shar Chetzi Damif. And v'chazru Beis Hillel is going to be Beis Shammai. And Beis Hillel was masking. So ask the Gemara and Rav Yehuda, you're telling me, Rav Yehuda, that we could force, again, excuse me, let's go the other way. So what comes out? That everyone is in agreement that if he was able to get married, then it would be fine. You're able to stay in this situation. It's not so convenient to work 1 day for this one and 1 day for that one. It's not a problem. Convenience wasn't enough. It was only when Beis Shammai came with his knockout taina that the world is created to marriage and there's no way to get marriage. That's when Beis Hillel folded. So I asked the Gemara and Rav Yehuda, you Rav Yehuda hold that convenience is enough to dissolve the partnership. But the problem is we see not that way. Explains the Gemara, Shani Acha, the agad ika, good leka. Says the Gemara in this case of the Chatzi Eved or Chatzi Bas Chayrin, you can't bring a raya. Why? Because this Eved can say, I'll make a price and redeem only half. But he can't say, set a price and buy the other half. Why? Because you can't sell, meaning it doesn't go both ways. In our case, says Rabbi Yehuda, it goes both ways, and that's why I hold you could do it. Either I'll set a price and buy, or you'll set a price and sell. But either way, everyone, flows back and forth. But in this case, the Eved, that's not shaykh, because there's no way that you could sell the free half of the Eved. That's what he says, Rabbi Yehuda. There's no kasha from this case. Tashema continues the Gemara on a kasha Rabbi Yehuda. The father left over a bathhouse and an olive price. So we take the profits of these two properties and they split up the profit. But what happens if they weren't made to be rented out, but rather these were made for his own personal use? So the usher, the rich brother, can tell the poor brother, as we turn over to Gimel base, to buy avadim and have them bathe in the bathhouse. Buy olives, says the Brisa that the wealthy brother is allowed to tell the poor brother, I know this is not convenient for you. I know you have really no usage. It's a luxury item to have your own bathhouse, to have your own olive press. But guess what? Go and deal with it. Kasha and Rav Yehuda. This is clearly inconvenient, clearly not usable. And yet we see that you can't compel, you can't push the other brother to sell. Says the Gemara, Asanami good equal a good leka. In this case as well, it doesn't go both ways. Why not? Because the brother without any money can't afford to deal with it. And therefore, that's the reason why Rav Yehuda will be masking In this case, you can force him to do it if you yourself can't buy. Tashimas, the Gemara flips the tables and asks on Rav Nachman 3 lines down. You give him a base kol sheilu yachlai kushmaya lav chalkim. Anything that if you would split it and retain its identity, you split it chalkim. If not, we compensate with money. So this is clearly a kasha of Nachman that says you can't force the person to split it up. Says the Gemara on this kasha Tanai that in actuality this machlekes of Yehuda and Rav Nachman is an earlier machlekes Tanayim detani tolat ashir banai pachai sheimin lai Rav Shimon Gamliel laimer no ein sheimin lai. So this machlekes in the Tanakama and Rav Shimon Gamliel is what? Says the Gemara, Dami, what's going on over there? If it's like the simple words, this is what the Brisa means to say. Tol at ashir va'ani pachais shaymin loy. According to the Tanakama, if one says you take the requisite amount and I'll take less, then he's allowed to say that. And if he said you set a price, I'll set a price, we also listen to him. And on that, so says the Gemara, we clearly have. So this machlekes of Shimon Gamliel at Tanakama is going to be the same machlekes as by us. Shimon Gamliel is going to hold like Rav Yehuda. Shimon Gamliel is going to hold like Rav Nachman. Tanakama is going to hold like Rav Yehuda. Says really as you thought originally. My time the Rashbag Misham Damar Le Ibn Demi Lastly Demi. If you want to split it up for cash, if you want to compensate, you want me to pay you with cash. Lastly Demi Lemeitilcha. I don't have the money. B'matana. You want to give it as a present? I don't want it. Which see how strong of a tainis so much so to win the entire over here regarding splitting up this property. Says the Gemara leaves this machlekes from Nachman and Rav Yehuda, and the Gemara now leaves this machlekes Tanayim. We try to say it's Tali machlekes Tanayim. Now the Gemara goes backwards and once again wants to prove Rav Yehuda. Amr le Abaye le Rav Yosef ad Rav Yehuda dishmuli. I'll prove Rav Yehuda by proving that Shmuel holds the same. That's Kisvei HaKodesh aval bi sheshnehem writing by Kisvei HaKodesh, even though they both sheshnehem writing, even they both agree lo yachlaiku. We don't split it up. Va'amar Shmuel, and Shmuel explained, Lo shanu ala bekrach echad. That's only if it's in one volume. We don't want to one scroll. We don't want to split up. It's going to ruin it. Aval b'shnei krichos chalkin. So he's like that less than to go to again. Ma'ir bekach echad. Avil b'shach shei krachem nami. Even with two krachem as well, you can't force the other partner to sell. So rather, Shmuel must hold like Rav Yehuda that you could force him to sell. A beautiful raya to Rav Yehuda. Tergum Rav Shalman b'shneihem right. No, it's not a raya because the case is where they both agree. It's not that one is more forceful than the other. Amar Ameimar Hilchasa is. So says Ameimar after this long machlekes of Nachman and Rav Yehuda, this machlekes Tanakama and Rashbag. Hilchasa is dina de gura yagod. There is a din of gura yagod. You could compel him to sell his portion. Amar le Rav Ashi. Says Rav Ashi Lamei Mar Hadra Nachman. What is this din of Rav Nachman? You cannot force him to sell. Amar le Lo Shemili. Kalaymar Lo Svirli. He doesn't hold of Rav Nachman. Veloi. Really? I mean, we just paskin not like Rav Nachman. But as Rav Ashi Lamei Mar, what about the opinion of Rav Nachman? So it says he doesn't hold of it. And he as well as passing like Rav Yehuda. Says the Gemara, why? Rav bar Chinina, Rav Dimi bar Chinina, Shavik lu avua, Tarti amhasa, left over two maidservants, Chada yada afaya ubishulei v'chaya dada pilcha v'nivla. And each one of these maids did something else. One knew how to bake, one knew how to cook, and one knew how to spin and weave. So how do you divide such an estate? Said Rav, there's no din of good or agid, meaning that you can't force him to split it up. seemingly Rav is not going with Rav Yehuda, and rather with Rav Nachman. So why did you, Amemar, go with Rav Yehuda? Says the Gemara, no, Raya Shani Hasam, that case is different. Tilamar mi bayale tarvayu, lamar mi bayale tarvayu. The reason is because over there, they each needed both because these shvachais did different jobs. Kikam leishkol at chada v'ano chada. Lav good or agud. To say you take one and I'll take the other is not a din of good or agud. In this case, it's not a classical case of forcing one to sell because they have different jobs that they each do. And we conclude with one last kasha on Rava. They both need it. Answers the Gemara. Tigmar of Shalman. The only time you split the Kisvei Kodesh is when they want to split it, not stand that one could compel the other one to split it. We'll stop over here by the Tanur Rabbanan. We'll pick it up. Siyata Dishmaya.